Here is the reason why you need to roll for Itto. But I'll be honest, you probably should not roll for Itto at least on day 1, and here are the reasons why. Welcome to another pre-release analysis. Before we start, there are a couple things importantly that I want to address. I felt like the entire pre-release analysis is kind of over. I'm not really sure if I'm still going to be making them. The main reason why I made them in the first place was to teach people about potential character problems so that people wouldn't overhype before release. And then that's why we always tend to look at the negative. And I felt like over time, people have learned not to overhype on a character early. It is best to wait for the actual analysis a little bit later before they decide if they want to roll the character or not. So overall, I think pre-release analysis have served its purpose and it's really good. Moving on, I think we can dial a little bit back on the pre-release analysis and even on the first impression video. We're gonna avoid talking about damage or even potential meta stuff. This video will be dialed back a little bit toward a more laid-back perspective. So a more appropriate title for this video would be like my early thoughts on Itto, what I think about him, but you know, gotta clickbait, right? Am I right? But most importantly is that we're gonna change up how we do the first impression video as well. We're gonna avoid doing any kind of comparison in the first impression video, or at least we will try to. Going to tune the main focus to only be on that characters. So like examples are, how does that character gameplay feel? Is it hard to play? Or does it have any obvious gameplay issues like energy issues or team synergy issues? There's a lot that we can talk about a character without doing any kind of meta comparisons. And then a week later, we'll do a meta analysis on that character where we finally talk about the character in the place of the meta using fear crafting and math from Kachane mains. So anyway, let's get started. Looking at Itto data, here are a few stuff that I observed about Itto. Overall, I think that he will most likely be a decent character, somewhere around Eula or Xiao level. It is powerful enough, but it's pretty average, which means like a 3 out of 5. So what that means is, from a meta perspective, you probably should not roll for him. Number 1, Itto has a very simple kit, which while making him very easy to play, it also means that he probably doesn't do anything exceptional, especially given that he's already massively held back by his element, which is Geo. Number 2, he most likely will have some energy problem just like Noelle, which means you might have to build some energy recharge on Itto. Number 3, he is very expensive. He's probably the most expensive character in Genshin Impact, both in terms of Primo Gem as well as Resin. We're gonna explain this a little bit later and dive into it a little bit more. First of all, Itto have a very simple playstyle and it's pretty much identical to Noelle. You want to cast his elemental burst to empower your attack, and then you want to cast your normal attack and then charge attack to do your finisher. Pretty much it, that's pretty much it. It's extremely simple, which could be seen as an upside for a casual player, but because it is so simple that it just means that he doesn't really do anything. Having a very simple kit means that the only thing that determines the string is how hard you can hit, aka the scaling on the character. If the scaling is high enough, he will be good. On the other hand, if the scaling is not high enough, then he won't be as good. He's the textbook version of a stat checking character, and this is especially a problem with Itto being Geo. There are just not many cases where you need a Geo DPS. It's not like Ganyu or Ayaka where you might think about, oh, do I need a crowd DPS so I can play a freeze team regardless of their scaling? Or equivalent statement for other element like Hydro. Do I need a Hydro character to supply Hydro for my Xiangli, once again, regardless of their scaling? We already covered in the previous video why Geo element is so weak as a element. And imagine if they ever brought back the Abyss Lectors or Hero, or maybe even introduced new ones like Pyro Lector. Suddenly, Geo as an element will once again become useless against those enemies, as he cannot break the shield as fast as other element could when up against those Abyss Lectors or Hero. Of course, we don't know if he's gonna hit hard enough or not. However, at the beginning of the video, we promised to not mention damage in any way, so we will simply see if he have the damage once he's released. The other thing I see of Itto is that he might have some potential energy issues. Itto is very dependent on his elemental burst, just like Noelle, because his elemental burst add a huge amount of attack onto him, as well as his elemental burst is what convert his normal and charge attack into Geo damage. Now his elemental bursts have a 70 cost, which is 10 higher than Noel's 60 cost. Of course, Noel have massive energy issues because Noel elemental skill does not generate any geo particle. However, Noel elemental burst does not end when you switch her out, which means you can say cast Noel elemental burst, switch to Geo MC to cast a boulder, which generate geo particle, and then switch back to Noel to funnel those geo particle into Noel. You cannot do this with Itto because Itto elemental burst will end as soon as you switch him off. This means Itto will be very dependent on off-field energy generation like Albedo or Zhongli, but in the past, as we've seen with Noel, those sources of energy is very inconsistent and is not enough to fully power Noel back. So I imagine that would be a similar case with Itto, especially since you probably want to pair Itto with Goro, and for magical reason, Goro elemental skill only generate 2 geo particle. Since Goro is currently playable in his hangout, Figurecrafter is able to test him out and reconfirm that his elemental skill only generates 2 geo particle, which is very disrespectful by MiHoYo. For a 10-second cooldown skill, generating 2 geo particle is for sure not gonna be enough to funnel into Itto. For reference, Ayaka elemental skill also have exactly of a 10-second cooldown, however it generates 4 to 5 crowd particle. Not to mention there are other crowd characters who also generate a lot of crowd particle like Diona or Rosaria. So generating 2 energy on Goro elemental skill is just not gonna be enough for Itto. Once again, as mentioned before, Itto cannot switch out during his elemental burst unlike Noel, which means that you cannot fully utilize other energy generation like Geo MC or Ningguang, and therefore I believe that Itto will have small amount of energy issues or maybe even medium amount. However, again, it will have to test that out when he's fully released to be confirmed. That brings us to our very last point, and that is Itto is going to be a very expensive character for your Primo Gem. Now, because Itto is Geo and because he doesn't work with that many characters, the only team that really work with him is probably going to be something like Itto, Goro, Albedo, and then like Zhongli, maybe a Ningguang, maybe like a Diona as a healer or defensive option in the last slot. This means you need to have 2 other very specific characters in order to properly play Itto or bring out Itto's full potential. And not to mention that both of these characters are gonna be very hard to obtain. If you're planning on rolling for Itto, you gotta ask yourself the question right now, and that is, do you roll for Albedo right now? Or maybe you even have to ask, do you even have enough Primo Gem to roll for both Albedo and then Itto after? A lot of the other limited 5-star character does not have this requirement. For example, Hu Tao needs Xingqius, but Xingqius is a highly available 4-star character. Xiao needs Sucrose, but Sucrose is also a highly available 4-star character. And while you can say, well, doesn't Morgana need Ganyu and Venti? Well, first of all, you can play Mouse Ganyu with Xiaoling, but most importantly is that Venti individually is a significantly better character than Albedo, which means you probably should roll Venti regardless as a standalone, but that's not the case for Albedo, as you are just rolling Albedo just to play him with Itto. So because of that, he is more expensive in the sense that you need 2 very specific limited 5-star characters. But not only that, we also know that he is gonna need Goro, which is not as available as the other 4-star character because Goro is gonna be a new 4-star character that is only obtainable on the Itto banner. Now you might be thinking, if I roll for Itto, the chances is that I will also get a Goro, right? And while it is likely, you cannot save it for a guarantee. In the past, we have seen many cases where people try to roll for a specific 4-star characters and end up failing. People go like 200 roll without getting their desired 4-star characters, and a lot of people hit their 5-star character before hitting that limited 4-star characters. What that means is that if you are planning on going for Itto and you're very lucky to get Itto say on the 50-50, but you don't have a single copy of Goro, what do? Do you keep on rolling hoping that Goro will show up before your next 5-star characters? Can you really even count on that? And what do you tell the player who have Itto but not a single copy of Goro, right? Overall, because of the situation where Itto need Goro and Albedo, and both of these characters are not as available as the other 4-star characters, it just makes Itto significantly more expensive in terms of your Primo Gem investment. And for that reason alone, regardless of his performance, I can already tell you like he is probably not gonna be a good role. And not only Primo Gem expensive, as you are most likely going to be running free Geo character, you might need up to free Geo artifact set, the Husk of Opulent Dream, which came out in the 2.3 Genshin Impact patch. This is a very expensive investment as you need to farm for free of the same artifact set, and these artifact sets do not work on other character except Geo characters. It is not like Emblem set where Emblem set work on multiple different characters from Pyro to Electro, and the other artifact set from the Emblem domain also work on pretty much any characters. Likewise, even a Noblest artifact set can work on many or multiple different characters, and again, the Husk of Opulent Dream set unfortunately will only work on Geo characters. So you'll be pouring in a lot of resin just to play this one very specific team, making this team very resin expensive. Lastly, as all of Itto, Goro, and Albedo scale off defense, that means that you might want to bring all of these characters to level 90. Once again, costing a lot of resin investment in the process, because for many other characters, level 80 is functional enough. Overall, these are my early thoughts on Itto. Overall, I don't really think that he will be weak, but I just don't think that he'll be meta enough to justify rolling for him if you are a player who is purely rolling characters for meta reason. And especially as Abyss get harder and harder, I just don't see Itto being in the meta. But regardless, you should never be rolling for characters on day 1 anyway. But in case you thought about that and there are some issues that you didn't see before, consider this as a warning. With that being said, as always, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you all next time.